Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 29th of October 2024 and these are the stories that we will try to decipher during the course of our show. We'll begin with the latest as far as the US elections are concerned. Around 7 days are left before these elections actually happen. 186.5 million Americans are eligible to vote for this November 5 election to choose the 47th President of the United States of America. The presidential race is not the only one on the ballot, and we all know that Americans will also elect people to fill various federal, state and local positions. They are the two houses of the Congress, that is the House of Representatives and Senate as well, and of course then there's the governors, and the list goes on. But of course the whole gamut of this race is around two people, Kamalaharris and Donald Trump. Who will emerge the winner is a question that many have on their mind, and this is what we will discuss in our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns breast cancer awareness. We all understand how important the early detection of cancers is, and in women, of course, the most predominant form of cancer is breast cancer. Many campaigns have happened across the world, including the Pink Ribbon campaign that began all the way a few decades back and has now progressed toward different countries. In Pakistan also, the Pink Ribbon campaign continues throughout the month of October. The Pink Ribbon campaign came afterwards, before the whole month of October was designed or designated as a cancer awareness month, especially breast cancer. And this is what we also wear here during the entire month of October. We thought it better to have the CEO of Pink Ribbon Pakistan with us, as well as an oncologist, to discuss what needs to be done about breast cancer awareness and the cancer in itself. This is going to be part of our second story. Then we are going to talk about smog that is engulfing Lahore, and of course the indexes are extremely high when it comes to the environmental pollution as far as Lahore is concerned. Speaking of smog, even Islamabad today, if you live in Islamabad, you must have witnessed the smog that has also engulfed Islamabad, I think for the first time this year. This is what we at least are witnessing. But of course smog is an issue, and smog is something that we need to cater to. Then 1 in 3 tree species, ladies and gentlemen, is at risk of extinction worldwide, threatening life as we know on Earth. We all know how different countries or people, organizations are cutting down trees to pave way for buildings or other such development mechanisms, and this is what is also cutting down on the oxygen across the world, and also cutting down on proper environmental protection across the world as well. This is going to be our last story. Let's begin with our first, and that concerns the US elections that are going to happen on the 5th of November. We've been joined by two guests. Let me introduce them to you one by one. In the studios, we've been joined by Dr. Tughral Yamin. He's a senior analyst and a dear friend. Thank you very much, Tughral Sahab, to have joined us.
Thank you.
And online, we've been joined by Syed Muhammad Ali. He's a lecturer with the Hopkins University and joins us from the US to give us a foreign affairs perspective as far as these US elections are concerned. Thank you very much, Ali, to have joined us as well. I'll begin with you, Ali, in fact. Ali, 7 days are left to the US elections. A week before election day, Vice President Kamala Harris pledges to turn the page on fear and divisiveness at a campaign rally in Michigan. Former US President Donald Trump, at a rally in Atlanta, hits out at critics, including former First Lady Michelle Obama, whom he calls nasty. If you just look at and generally, I'm not pinpointing at this particular campaign, but for somebody who understands foreign policy and politics of the US, how successful are these campaigns so far? What's the focus in your point of view for both Kamala Harris as well as Donald Trump in these last days of the US elections?
Well, I mean, I suppose both being successful in their own ways, in the sense that they are neck to neck, right? I mean, it's up in the air what the outcome of the elections are going to be. But from another perspective, I mean, it is showcasing, this mediocrity and this sort of disappointment for many that, this is the most powerful country in the world, and this is the kind of leadership. On the one hand, this kind of lackluster Democratic candidate who is seen by many as just, another manifestation of the establishment here, and, who's who's toying and trying to balance issues of gender and identity. And on the other hand, I mean, the Republicans have really gone to the far right in the kind of crassness that is evident in how they postulate particular postures and whipping up this kind of disgruntlement, which is being felt in America, which has to do with its kind of position in the world, in the kind of world we live in, where there is glaring inequality, which produces glaring inequalities, and that inequality within the U.S. has created this sense of disgruntlement, and the populism, then comes to the rescue by trying to pit one blue-collar worker against another, using issues of race and identity. And this has really come to a boiling point this time around, and it's quite disheartening to watch this circus, as they say.
All right. Coming to you, Dr. Tughral, Harris and Trump, as Ali has also pointed out, are more or less neck to neck. Analysts predict that the election will come down to razor thin margin in a very few swing states. There are different polls that are coming out. CNN is coming out with one, Reuters is coming out with one. 538's daily election poll tracker also says that Harris holds a narrow lead in the national polls with a 1.4 percentage point advantage as of Tuesday, that is today. This is a little dip from the previous week when she was ahead by 1.7 points. What, in your point of view, are these polls predicting in general, and how accurate are these polls for this election, looking at the past elections and what the polls had predicted then?
Straw polls are never accurate, and when people go to polls, sometimes these straw polls are not proven to be correct. It has happened at times in American elections also. Even sometimes the newspapers have come up with headlines that Mr. So-and-so has won and actually he had lost. So anything can happen on the day of the polls, which is, as you said, 1 week away. But I generally share the assessment of my colleague from the United States that there is a general apathy about the kind of leadership that United States of America is providing to the world. United States of America, as we all know, is the world's richest, the most powerful, technologically most advanced country. And yet, these are the two people whom they are choosing to elect as their president. There's nothing particular about Trump. Trump, we know, is, sorry to say, he can lie. He can say things which are not true at all. The Americans have witnessed that on 9th of January 2021, his followers actually stormed the Capitol Hill in trying to reverse the decision. It was a coup d'etat, if one puts it that way. And then he's been charged on various on things like hush money.
That was 6th of January, not 9th. That was this year.
January 2020.
Yes, 2021, yes, true.
2021, yeah, exactly. 2 months after the elections.
Yes.
And we know that he has been talking to Putin secretly. He has been, his former chief of staff has said that he is in awe of Adolf Hitler, although he's denied it. Similarly, Kamala Devi Harris has also doesn't inspire me, at least. She's a younger person. She's a woman of color, but both of them have agendas which are anti-Muslim. None of them wants an end to the war in Gaza, although Trump says that he is a man of peace, but I don't think he is. He will go against the Israelis. They are powerful lobbies. The most powerful lobby in America is the AIPAC, the Israeli lobby, and then there are people like Elon Musk and the arms industry and others. even Jeff Bezos to a certain point, he's not in
We'll come to Jeff Bezos a bit later.
Okay.
But I understand that, and I understand also your perspective as far as these polls, different kinds of polls are concerned, because they, as you say, are never really accurate. They give a certain prediction about how things are going and where they are moving towards, but they cannot be really accurate about things, as you have yourself pointed out. Ali, incendiary devices were set off Monday at 2 ballot drop boxes, one in Portland and another in Vancouver in Washington, that destroyed hundreds of ballots. People are calling it a direct attack on democracy. What was the motive in your point of view?
Well, it's just an indication of the polarization, how emotions are running high on both sides. So it is symptomatic of that. I mean, there's been an assassination attempt on former President Trump while he was canvassing. I mean, that has led to a reshuffle in sort of the security services apparatus and their modus operandi. So it is, after the Capitol Hill, I mean, sentences are still being passed down to people for their role in that. And there is a real, sort of danger for political violence, which would be quite a shock to the American polity. But a lot of these groups, like sort of the Proud Boys and others, they still feel emboldened enough, that if they are given if one of the candidates announces, early, declares himself a winner, or chooses to contest the election results, that could whip up these negative sentiments, and how they would play out then, the mob mentality, and they would be picked up by sort of other disgruntled elements. So there is this danger, that is recognized. I mean, the establishment is, of course, prepared for it, and, America is a heavily policed state, and it has the capacity and the resources to contend with these issues. But a lot of these groups are, they have a disdain for this sort of, not necessarily the over-securitized state, because that, creates lesser space for, types of dissent that push back against the American state. But here's this sense of, of freedom and being able to do what you want to do, the ability to carry arms. So it's that kind of freedom and this sense of entitlement that people have, right? And this kind of pushback, which can also be very, it can create chaos. That kind of danger does remain. So, the jury's out on how this process will unfold. Will it unfold uncontested? The election results, are they going to be easily accepted? I think at some stage, President Trump did say that if he loses now, he's not going to contest again. Age is certainly not going to be on his side. But whether he will be willing to accept the election results as being legitimate
is another thing altogether, Ali. That is so true. Well, coming to you, Dr. Tughral, 7 key swing states. This is what everybody is saying are going to decide the results of the elections. And both campaigns, that of Trump and of Kamalaharris, have put their focus and efforts there. Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Michigan, Arizona, Wisconsin, and Nevada. They say Harris has a narrow lead in Michigan, Trump holds a slight edge in Pennsylvania and Nevada, and a more substantial lead in North Carolina, Arizona, and Georgia. So Trump more or less has more of a lead as far as these states is concerned. How important, in your point of view, will these 7 states be in the next week or so? What's your prediction? What are other people and analysts also telling you? Because I'm sure you must be discussing.
I've been reading surveys on the net, and we know that in the American elections, president and vice president are not elected directly.
True.
So they might garner more popular votes, but still lose if the electors think otherwise. So really predictions are difficult, but if you think from Pakistan's point of view, there will be no change in the policies, although if you have read Jamshed Marker's book, Cover Point, he has quoted probably General Zia. He says every 4 years, elections takes place in the United States and the mighty river changes course, leaving us high and dry. Actually, that's not the case. Perhaps General Zia was offered $4 million by President Carter and $4 billion by President Reagan. That's why he said that. But usually the American policies, insofar as Pakistan is concerned, remain stable. Although, surprise, surprise, the American caucus in USA has endorsed President Trump. They must be having their own reasons.
I don't know what the reasons are, but nevertheless, when you come to these 7 states, if I were to ask you in one single phrase, what is your take on these 7 states? What's going to happen?
Unpredictable.
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 Okay, unpredictable. Fine. Ali, you hinted a little bit about the foreign policy and the different from the Democratic point of view and the Republican point of view, especially on key issues that include Palestine, that include the current Russia and Ukraine crisis as well. Are there similarities in your point of view between the Democratic and the Republican stance on these important global issues? And in your point of view, are Republican-linked ads stirring Israeli tensions to undermine Kamalaharris? Also, I'd like to understand how big a say could the US support for Israel's war on Gaza have on this result?
I mean, first, Ukraine, I think that's where one could see a divergence. And, there is concern within the US establishment because for Russia's sort of attempt to reassert itself on the global stage, it's been doing a bunch of things, which have had implications in the Middle East. I mean, not on Palestine, but on Syria, for instance, Putin's in sort of backing of the Bashar al-Assad regime. He does have maintained ties also with Iran. I mean, they've been seeing eye to eye on Syria. In the Ukraine, so if it was a pushback by Putin to NATO's expansionist agenda, there is a possibility that in his transactional mode and his sort of, admiration for strongmen leaders in the world, President Trump might want to, pull back on lending more support to the Ukraine and, letting Russia retain some of that territory. I mean, there'll undoubtedly be pushback within the US, from the Department of Defense and the State Department as well, because it would be a large concession to Russia. But there is a possibility that could, I mean, if Russia gets what it wants and Ukraine doesn't get the kind of support that it needs from the US, that might be a way to bring about peace, an unjust peace, if you will. But when it comes to Palestine, I was just reading right now, like J.D. Vance has, for instance, said that, there is a point where American and Israeli interests diverge. And this was out in the Israeli press, his interview, because he says that, the US does not want an outright war with Iran. And, of course, he's endorsing the Abraham Accords, this idea of normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel, and then sort of a lot of development happening and shiny beachfront properties in Gaza. And, a lot of the demolition work cost will already be saved because 75% of Gaza has been decimated already. So, it would not be a very easy outcome, because for Saudi, it's also now much more difficult, given what's happened in the last year, to normalize. I mean, the UAE is still holding on to that normalization of ties, but for Saudi, it's going to be quite difficult. So it's not an easy task for the Republicans And similarly for the Harris campaign, which is following, to a certain degree, the Biden administration's position, she has said that she will rethink the provision of arms. I mean, she has talked about the humanitarian issues more than Biden has. And at some stage, she had said that they'd reconsider the continued supply of arms to Israel to do what it's doing. But we will really need to see, because once, these are slogans and campaigns, and they're trying to carefully balance, not isolate APAC, and at the same time, trying to show a slight humane side to American policy making. But, once they come into a position of power, that's where we will really see, what if there will be a difference if Kamala Harris comes to power. I mean, Netanyahu for right now, he's thinking of it as a free-for-all till the election results, and he might be more emboldened if we see President Trump come in.
Let's see how things move along. Thank you very much, Syed Muhammad Ali, to have joined us, lecturer at Johns Hopkins University. We have to go to a short break and then we continue with our show. Welcome back. October is a month of breast cancer awareness. It started way back in the year 1985 by the American Cancer Society and has now since taken over the world, and of course in Pakistan also we observe the whole month. You can see the pink ribbons, but this pink ribbon campaign in fact started from 1992, again from other countries, and then it dissipated towards the entire world, including in Pakistan, where there is a pink ribbon campaign that is heralded by Dr. Omar Aftab, who is the CEO of Pink Ribbon, and he also joins us online to talk about this, as well as a consultant oncologist, Dr. Hira Asim, who joins us in the studio as well. But I'd like to begin with Dr. Hira Asim. Dr. Hira, how important is it to be aware of cancers that could be aggressive like breast cancer? What are the common risk factors as far as Pakistani women are concerned, and the early signs and symptoms that you could maybe detect yourself and then go to doctors such as yourself? What kind of screening recommendations also would you like to recommend to women in the early stages? I just want to have a summarized introduction to all of this.
Thank you, Omar, for inviting me. Basically, breast cancer is one of the most common cancer in the world, and it is the major cause of death in women all over the world as well as in Pakistan. So it is very important for women to know that why does it happen, what are the basic signs and symptoms that the women can have with respect to this cancer, and what are the treatment options available with us. So basically with time we see that the cancer incidence is rising, and because of the various reasons, including environmental factors and lifestyle indications. But one thing I want to mention here, that being a female is itself a risk factor. This is a female disease. This is a female related health problem. So if you are a female, you are at a risk of breast cancer. Then there are other factors, like for women who have never had children, who had their periods at a very young age, and who didn't breastfeed, who became never pregnant, and who had treatments for infertility, who had hormone replacement therapy for a long time, who had use of oral contraceptive pills for a long time, or women who for that matter, who had been very inactive, had a sedentary lifestyles, and all these women, they are at high risk of breast cancer. So obesity is one of the major causes of different cancers. Similarly, it is one of the major cause of breast cancer as well, which is often neglected in our country. So on average, the BMI in our country for women is between 30 to 35, which should ideally be 20 to 25. Right. So it is one of the major factors our women are getting these cancers. So in addition to that, we have no physical activity, our environment is polluted, we have different chemicals which we inhale because of our polluted environment. Then we have different food contaminations, our water is not clean, our foods have various preservatives, and with time our intake of different foods which are more preserved and packaged is increased. So all these factors combined, they are posing at an increased risk of breast cancer. So in addition to that, I want to tell you that yes, we are at risk of breast cancer, but one should be aware of what are the major signs and symptoms so that we can detect it early. As we know that it is so common that every 1 in 8 or 9 women will have breast cancer in their life. So if this is so common, then any one of us can have it. So we should be aware of the basic signs and symptoms that one can have, which may include a slight changes in the breast, which can be just minor changes, including inversion of the nipple, like if there is any skin redness, or if the one side of the one breast is heavier than the other breast, or the size of one breast is larger than the other breasts, and it has started enlarging suddenly. And if you feel a lump in the breast, so lump means that if you feel that one part of the breast is harder than the rest of the breast or the other breast, then that is a feeling of a lump. So if you see any skin changes or nipple changes, including redness, and if there is a discharge from the nipple, all these can be early signs and symptoms of breast cancer. Similarly, any lump in the axilla or near the collarbone, which means that in the lower part of the neck, if anybody has a lump near the collarbone or the lower part of the neck, that can be a sign of breast cancer as well. So if you have any of these signs and symptoms, we have to go to the doctor and get ourselves examined. The doctor will evaluate and will confirm those changes and will advise you an age appropriate test. Like for example, if somebody who comes to us with a lump at the age of 45 years, we will recommend a mammogram, or if somebody comes to us at an age like 35, we will recommend an ultrasound. So there is an age appropriate test for every woman if they have any changes in the breast. So once the doctor confirms on examination and then the age appropriate imaging, then they advise biopsy. That is the confirmatory test that confirms breast cancer. So this is how the breast cancer is diagnosed, and these are the basic signs and symptoms that the women should know that if they have.
And of course, this is how they also need to be screened. You said the screening is also age specific, the kind of screening.
Yeah, so screening is basically a test that is done in normal women. Like we talked about the women who have signs and symptoms, who did their examination, had signs and symptoms, and they have come to a doctor, and the doctor has examined them and confirmed them. Screening is basically a simple breast X-ray. Screening is a test that is basically recommended for women who are above 40 years of age. And this test, the beauty of this test is that it detects breast cancer at a precancerous stage or at a very, very early stage before even the lump is formed.
All right.
So every woman who is 40 years of age should get a mammogram done. And
every
then,
couple of months, basically.
Yes. No. So at 40 years of age, you will start doing your mammography, and you will repeat it every 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
So it's not just one mammogram that you have to do at 40 years. You have to repeat that mammogram every 2 to 3 years to monitor the changes that are going on into your breast. So many of the changes in the breast, they are just picked by noticing the changes in different mammograms. So sometimes in our country specifically, it may not be possible for women to do their mammograms like every 2 to 3 years, but they should understand that screening mammography is not one time test. It should be regularly done.
That is a very important point, but also campaigns to make aware such important issues for women such as breast cancer is also very important. We have with us Dr. Omar Aftab, who is waiting very patiently since quite a long time. Dr. Omar, thank you very much to have joined us. Dr. Omar, the Pink Ribbon campaign that began in 1992, and now of course you spearhead this since the last decades in Pakistan as well. How important has this campaign been since you began it? What are the success stories that you have brought forward under your Pink Ribbon campaign as well? And how does the whole process of financing, of taking care, of managing as such an important campaign goes through?
Thank you very much. It has been a very difficult journey all of these years. Now it's been 22 years we are running this campaign in Pakistan, and we started from a point where talking about this bird bee was not possible at any level, while it, either it was on television channels, on radio, or going into community. So at every level, it was almost impossible to talk about this issue. On the other hand, Pakistan has the highest rate of breast cancer in all of Asia. More than 10 million women are at risk of breast cancer in Pakistan. More than 50,000 deaths every year with breast cancer in Pakistan. So how can we address such a big disease if we can't talk about it? So the biggest challenge for us was for many years to talk about this issue, to highlight the importance of this issue, to engage with the stakeholders, to engage with the government at different level, because the magnitude of this issue is so big that we need to have a multi-stakeholder approach for this. So, but still, we have come to a point where we have started talking about it. Yes, generally now people would know about Pendragon. They know that there is something like breast cancer, but when this year, during our October campaign, we did a survey to see that how many women they practice early detection, how many women they go for mammograms for prevention. And you will be surprised that still, unfortunately, it's hardly 2 to 3%. And that's why 70% of women, they still report at third stage or even fourth stage with this disease. So we need to, work more on the behavior change. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to, despite of running these campaigns again and again every year for a month, we haven't been able to bring that change. And the reason, one of the reasons is that we being a patriarchal society and talking about women issues, and then especially those issues which include women's sexuality, that becomes very challenging. So we still see that there are three stages of denial we see amongst the patients. First of all, if there is a symptom, they would deny, they would not go to a doctor for checkup. Then if they go to a doctor and if they are being diagnosed, then there is the second stage of denial, that either they would not tell their family or they would not go for the treatment. We need to really focus on, and this is the only cancer, in fact, the reason of running this campaign again and again every year is that this is the only cancer which can be diagnosed at the early stage. And if it's diagnosed at early stage, chances of survival are more than 95%. But still, I think we need to do more to, reach out to women, to motivate women, to get themselves checked, to go for self-examination, to go for clinical.
Dr. Omar, I agree with you that much more needs to be done, and by the statistics that you are mentioning, a lot more needs to be done, with starting with awareness amongst the women and the initiative amongst the women to go forward and not only understand what breast cancer is and how you can detect it at an early stage, so that you can also be treated at the right time. Thank you very much, Dr. Omar Aftab. Thank you very much, Dr. Hira Asim, to have joined us. We're a bit short of time, or else we would have continued to talk about it. This brings us to the end of today's show. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow when news story segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.